We'll be talking about Airbnb today, and I will be with Uvika. Uvika, how are you?
Hi, Thibault. I'm well. How are you? Tired, I see.
Tired
But
and cold
the
and cold. But on the other hand, I know Airbnb is always a topic that gives us all a lot of energy. So that should be good. What do you think?
it is definitely one of those topics. Once you get started, it's hard to stop. So today the challenge is going to be keeping it under 1 hour. But I think we can do it. I think we packed a tight program.
Yeah, we did a dry run earlier today and go through the structure. Obviously, you'd have again just a few slides so we can capture basically the big changes in four parts, one slide per part, and then we'll just talk through it. We may jump into Airbnb to show you more things. As usual, polls are here, so we can also check your pulse to see how things are going for you. All right, I think there's close to 50 people now. Let's just get started. So as usual, hello everyone, and feel free indeed in a chat to say hello and maybe tell us where you're based, how many properties you are. And I see Bart already from Lake George, Colorado. Hello. How are you? Good to see you. Again, feel free in the chat to let us know where you are. Hello, Fred. Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. Good to see you as well. Let us know again where you are, we're based, because for example, some changes affected people more than others, like the new, the host fee only model obviously hit a lot property managers in the US, where the rest of the world, it's kind of been around for a while. So the hit was a bit different. All right, Hawaii, hello, Greece. So Kara from Hawaii, Heike from Greece. Oh, Greek island. Look at that. Just what I need. All right. So I let you all streaming. And again, hello from Montreal and Bali. So I guess bonjour and selamat pagi. All right. On this, let's get started with the slides. And it's me who has to do this. Look at that. So to streaming, I will make sure we're checking as well. And Yuvika, if you can keep on welcoming people before where I'm fumbling with the slides, that's great.
Absolutely. That's a tradition, so you must keep that alive. I see Basil is here from Walt Disney World Resort area. Popular market. Karen Bickford from Massachusetts. Lisa from Utah. Wow, that's a lot of North American attendees today so far. It's great to see.
It's good to
It
see.
would also be super helpful if you can share how many properties you are managing at the time. Kind of helps us adapt what we're saying to your situation as much as we can. We try to think on our feet. So that would be good to know as well. There's a poll running right now, so feel
Indeed,
free.
usually we think you're property managers with quite a few listings, but again, correct us if you're wrong. That's what this webinar or this poll is for. All right, let's get started. So, all right, we're talking about basically what you can expect in 2026 on Airbnb. That's the summary. Cool. Let's dive in. Um, I'm Thibault. I'm the founder of RSU by PriceLabs. By night, but by day, by day, my full-time job is being head of product marketing at PriceLabs. So basically, making sure the product resonates with the markets as we develop it, as we take it to market. How about you, Yuvika?
Hi everyone, I'm Uvika. I don't do this often, but I'm really excited to be hosting for maybe the second time this year with Thibault. I'm the editor at RC by PriceLabs. Me, along with Stigda, we are both responsible for the newsletter that comes into your inbox every week, the articles that we publish. We've also been sharing one video every week this year, all of this year, and we've had some good response. So if you have any comments to share about that, of course, feedback is welcome. Welcome, everyone.
Cool. And indeed, I see that basically two-thirds of people have between 5 and 99 listings, which of course is a world of difference. And you have a few people with a few listings and a few people, actually five people with more than 250 listings. So welcome, everyone. We make sure we adapt to this. All right. Yuvika, maybe it's the second webinar you're hosting, but you're also a face and voice of PriceLabs. We see you often on YouTube Shorts and videos. So at PriceLabs, at Rental Scale Up, sorry. So what do you do at RSU by PriceLabs? What kind of resources does RSU offer?
Well, depends on what way you like to consume your media, whatever you choose. We try to do it all. We publish articles every week on rentalscaleup.com. Now RC by Price Labs. We have a weekly newsletter free to subscribe, which is how you probably got to know about the webinar today. We also publish one long form video on YouTube for those who like to tune in and maybe go about their chores. There's also podcasts for those people, as well as short videos for bite-sized content for people on the go, which is also a lot of you.
All right. That was a little plug, but it's good to do. All right, as I said. So what we're going to see again, the idea was not to go after each and every, new update. For example, Airbnb released its winter 2025 update about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we're not going about each every of these updates, for example, but we're going to make sure to incorporate that in these 4 key trends I think we could be talking about today. For example, will you be getting more cancellations on Airbnb in 2026? I think so. I will see why I think so. And as well, what we think with Uvika, what can happen here. Is Airbnb becoming booking.com, which is something we've heard? We'll say yes and no. But again, why people are feeling like this? That because is it becoming this large website that offer hotels and take a high commission from you as a host and again it's super cancellation friendly for guests. So is Airbnb now booking? We'll see yes and no, and then two more topics that will actually be driven by Uvika. Do you want to quickly present them for the agenda?
Absolutely. This has been a big year for Airbnb in becoming the Amazon of travel or a lifestyle marketplace. So I'm going to talk about that, what that means, what new businesses we've seen, what we might see in 2026. And for the word in everyone's mind, AI, and also on Airbnbs this year, which is kind of new for Airbnb, and we'll also go into why that is. So I'm excited to share both.
All right, so I think that's the one slide I have for the first topic. All right, let's get started. So as we're saying, basically, there's sort of a conjunction. Again, presenting this slide and go in full conversation, also see your reactions on that. But as we've covered Airbnb obviously several times this year, with quite often dedicated webinars, right? And we heard topics such as, oh, Airbnb is taking over, is has more control over my listing. So we heard this theme already. Again, we had a webinar just about that. So I don't necessarily want to go about this, from again, what we mean here is like, when they were a bit having more control on what links you can share in chats, or telling you what you can do, or so that's a bit what we've seen as a theme. But for 2026, I think if we put together several things, I think we can talk about cancellations here. As property managers and owners, for example, we know cancellations are important, and I'll be talking about Booking.com in a minute, but Airbnb was kind of supposed to be that platform where the cancellation rate was lower than the others. That was really a benefit, especially Booking.com, for example, right? Um, and I mean, guest initiated cancellations. And yet, what we've seen is that Airbnb is trying to make its platform more guest friendly on the cancellation side. Um, and he has some proof for that. So, as you may know, this year, Airbnb removed its strict policy. I think strict policy had been around since the beginning, right? So I think you had to act before, I forgot the exact date, but October was sometime in October. You had to take action to grandfather your strict policy for your properties. And they stopped actually offering to new listing the strict policy in August, I believe. And now it's gone, right? I think in place of strict, you have something called firm, which is, well, not strict. It's just firm. Um, so that's interesting, and it's a moment where you can see that they really even for new listings, right? Make sure that new listings will by default offer make it easy for guests to cancel in advance. Something also introduced with each and every policy, consumer policy you may have seen this as well, is a 24-hour free cancellation. What it means, I mean, again, we see this on the platforms, right? It's sort of a grace period, if you will, in which, by which within which a guest can say, "Oops, I made a mistake. I changed my mind. I'm going to cancel." Uh, for example, even my one of my properties is grandfathered with a strict policy, but even there, this 24-hour free consultation thing applies, right? So it's applying across all the policies. Um, if I talk about why they're doing for both this in a way, it's because again, there's a feeling that guests can make mistakes, they can change their mind. It's better they do it now than later. So a grace period basically allows you to only at some point have guests that are happy to stay at your place, have made a real choice. So I guess it's one of his thinking to do this. Um, Strict policy being removed and the overall move to make it more flexible is also something I saw when I was working at Booking.com. You may know I worked for 5 years at the headquarters of Booking.com. At Booking.com, for example, I saw clear data, right, that showed that the more flexible the cancellation policies on the platform overall, the more bookings they would get. That makes sense, right? Suddenly guests look like, oh, it's less of a risk of booking a place. I can change my mind. It's great. And yet, it's not and also overall people tend to book more and people overall the platform will have more bookings because guests are more attracted, they find the platform better, so in the end, the even though the number of cancellations can increase, the overall number of booking net will increase for the platform. Yet obviously it doesn't say that your property in the end is getting more bookings, because you can completely have on your level a cancellation and somebody books another place. So maybe it's great overall for the platform being more flexible, so better for the guests, but sometimes for us as property managers and owners, yes, it may be not guests, but overall, normally the idea is that if the platform overall is more flexible, people will book more. Another factor, before I get out of the slide to talk a bit more directly about what's happening and why, is reserve now, pay later. So again, it's something you've probably seen right in the industry, like Klarna, all these services enable you to pay installments. Um, why could that increase consumer prices? Where basically they are installments, and in a way, if people fail to honor, for example, the second installment, that booking gets cancelled. So right, regardless of your policy in a way. So you get a cancellation even though you're not supposed to get a cancellation, just because people chose that. And something I want to talk about is dynamic cancellation policies quickly. And again, I will step back to talk about through why they're doing all this. So the idea again is that, and I hopefully you can go there. Is my screen being shared? Right. Okay, perfect deep link from Uvika. So again, just make sure what it is. So in 2026, basically, you'll be able, just to tell you, you'll be able to say, instead of having one size fits all cancellation policy for the whole year, I will be able in your calendar to say, okay, from this date to that date, high season, I will use firm, and in super low season, I will use, I don't know, flexible, for example, right? Just to say, so you'll be able basically to have several policies running for the same thing, which in a way is good, because you could argue that it's again bringing more flexibility and you want more protection at some point, and maybe you want to give more leeway to your user than another, right? That's what they're doing for this. So if I stop sharing here and talk about this for a moment, so why is Airbnb doing this, right? As we saw, the idea is that to imagine, even if in a way, even if demand is the same, by having more flexible cancellation policies, the math in which shows that the platform in the end gets more bookings. Again, as if you're the property that's getting cancelled in the process, it'll be great. But that's the thinking, right? That in the end, the math showed, again, I saw clear data, Booking.com around this, that the more people think it's flexible, it's no brainer. It just lowers the barrier to book and makes the platform more bookable. In the end, everyone gets more bookings, especially the platform, but hopefully it benefits everyone, just thinking. Same thing for, in a way, reserve now, pay later. Think about this as well. It means for the same demand, suddenly some listings can get booked because maybe uh, we had some travelers seeing a listing before and just could not afford, they could not shell out a big amount of money for a big house, right? Like in one payment. Here, with several installments, suddenly they can afford this. So if you think about this, all these movements around that may cause higher cancellation policies are also in a way for them to, with the same demand, to get more bookings. Uh, of course, it means that to maybe us getting more cancellations. And if I get through this, so what's interesting to me is dynamic policy. So dynamic policies doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean it's magically adapting like this and that, right? Just dynamic, what it means here in this case, it means depending on the date, that's a dynamic part. Depending on the date that they will apply the policies you choose, right? That's what it means, dynamic. It's not like they're dynamically adapting the policies or stuff. It's not like dynamic pricing adapting to super complex stuff. It's more like it does change, but with time. That's what dynamic means. Again, here, again, it's a way maybe to tempt you, if you have, for example, like me, a strict cancellation policy, to maybe be more flexible, let's say in low season, right? So that's the thing again, right? Even if you you want to be strict, for example, or super firm at some point, here's a way to tempt you as a host to do this. Um, Uvika, what's your view about this? How do you feel about this, my theory, people should be expecting higher cancellation rates in 2026?
I mean, we've heard Brian Chesky confirm that they will probably see more cancellations on the platform, but they are also convinced that more bookings will make sure that it all evens out and in fact is more profitable in the larger scheme of things. Um, but like you mentioned before, Booking.com has already been following sort of these measures before. So it's in a way, it's Airbnb almost catching up, I guess, in some ways, providing this flexibility. Is it, what do you think about that?
Mm. Yeah, I'm curious as well. I think there was a poll, but it went too fast because I was so passionately communicating about this. Do you remember what the poll was about and the results? It went a bit too
Uh,
fast.
we had just asked everybody if they were seeing more cancellations in 2025 already, and quite a few of them did say yes.
Thanks.
And I mean, not it's not the majority. Majority says yes, slightly. Oh, there it is, reshared.
Yeah, and I remember a number. I think don't. I mean, again, I worked at Booking.com long time ago, right? It was like I had my own company, then sold my company to PriceLabs. I was a long time ago. That was at least 5 years ago. Um, And I think at some point, I mean, the conversion rate overall on the platform could be in double digits and not and that not starting with a one. So it's again, right, you have to take into account that's a platform where you have a lot of hotels, which is easier to cancel a hotel, right? Who has not? I think we're gonna now switch into oh, I meant to see. Sorry about this. I mean, send a message to everyone. Again, feel free to agree or disagree in the chat with me, right? So you can chime in as well. So I can, read your comment and be your voice here. But um, let's. I'm getting a question from Fred, right? Say why OTA is not utilizing rental insurance more. I know I have the option to pay for it if a guest who pays for it and then cancels. Where does that money go? Yeah, it's interesting indeed, right? We see Airbnb actually has been communicating a lot around to their investors, financial analysts, about the money they're making on insurance. So Airbnb sells insurance, right? It's more like travel insurance, actually, though, right? Um, what's interesting, I should look into this. Maybe while Yuvika will be speaking, I will discreetly go to their website. I don't think there's a consortium thing in here. What I mean to say, there is, but probably not for us, right? So exactly, right, exactly, right. So it's interesting because you could argue this you cancel. They probably insure as well for that cancellation, and again, the guest gets the money back. But I don't think the host would get, right? Um, but these kind of models kind of exist in a way. If you think about on Verbo, for example, right? As a guest, as a host, sorry, you can instead of taking a damage deposit, you can sort of set a waiver, right? And if you're property manager, you could also make some money on that. Well, no, you can't. Sorry, but Verbo is selling insurance. There we go. Verbo used to insure bookings when people used to the pay later thing. As it got paid if they cancel. Not sure if they still do. Ooh, that's a good one. Thank you, Kara. Let's check this one, right? Again, I'm reading this aloud because it was a bit fast. Kara said, Verbo used to insure bookings when people used the pay later thing. I still got paid if they cancel. Not sure if they still do. We can look at that because I'm pretty sure that's not what's happening with the pay now, pay later, reserve now, pay later with Airbnb. And let me, again, I will link into that while we are talking about another topic. Okay, cool. So we talked a lot about Airbnb cancellations, and let's go. And I also introduced the notion of booking. So let's go to the next thing. Is Airbnb becoming booking? And again, I'm curious to see how you're feeling about this. So why we're mentioning this, and again, I need to share my screen. And I hope you get this right. We talk about cancellation rate, as you know, that can create havoc, for example, in your thing, right? Um, more bookings, but more churn. Okay. Um, all right. Boom. Okay. So it's a lot of things here. Let me just go through this, which is, I think it's a very useful slide. So in a way, I would say more indeed, their Airbnb is clearly using some pages of Booking.com's playbook for two reasons, right? The first reason that some stuff Booking.com is doing is just making money. I mean, Booking.com has been a fantastic cash machine for years. And second, again, there's some pressure for Airbnb to on Airbnb from their investors, probably and shareholders, who say, well, why don't you do like they're doing to get more money, right? So some examples of this, what we've heard, what we've seen, where people say, "Oh, it's just like Booking.com's model has always been to take only money from the host, not to be commissioned on the host side, and the model has always been around 15%. Now in the US, PMS connected people using a PMS or channel manager, for example, now must also pay a commission of 15.5%. And the rest of the world, this has been true actually for several years. The difference rest of the world, actually, it increased from 15 to 15.5%, which is interesting because, if they can increase like this from 15 to 15.5%, what's preventing them to go 16% at some point, right? Why not? Because the pain will only be felt by us on the host property manager side, right? But that's interesting. So in a way, the models are getting closer on that side. And again, we did a whole session about this, that how it's not really changing the prices, not putting you at a disadvantage compared with people who are still on split fee model. That's a whole story. I don't know if you can link to an article where you explain that. But it's at least that's the model, right? That's the model that's converting. It was a model that probably opening the way for them to be able to increase this, because you're not increasing cost on the guest side, but on the host side at some point. Let's see. I'm not saying it's a prediction for 2026 because it just increased this, but we can see this. As I said as well, cancellation flexibility. We talked about this. That was a thing like, it was like verbal. You could do whatever you wanted, your own policies, and Airbnb had this only small array of cancellations you could do, and booking was like, booking is clearly advertising. Booking.com, for example, has been years advertising on TV, especially in Europe, things like cancel anytime. It was like you saw people actively canceling a booking, and the owner or the hotel person being unhappy, smiling, not smiling, as people were booking, canceling, as if that was a game, by the way. I was like looking at this, I'm like, oh wow, as a guest, why not? If I'm the partner on the other side, I'm like, yeah, thanks. It's not a game. Another thing as well is that Booking.com in terms of merchandising has been really good, right? But sometimes Booking.com doesn't have any availability for dates you're looking for. They're always being able to show similar properties or similar dates, or that property is available for the dates. You see more and more of this in Airbnb's results. These more carousels, merchandising that allow people to still try to sell stuff if it's not exactly what they wanted. Airbnb has been doing this for this flex search for since COVID, actually, really 2 years after COVID, about, but it's just reinforcing this. Again, it's a way to make more have more conversion from an existing demand. Um, Obviously, the big one is Airbnb has officially, we talked about what they launched, but they have officially relaunched their hotel effort. And not just, pre-COVID, they had some hotels already and they did acquire Hotel Tonight and they did some integration since that you can now use your Hotel Tonight points to book on Airbnb. Here it's further, right? If I'm clicking right away and sharing the right thing, am I not going to a property page? I am. You can see now hotels in here in Madrid. You can see, for example, this hotel, right? And what's interesting, again, I'm clicking here. What's interesting is not just that, oh, they have hotels. You can see that Airbnb, that was part of their winter update, I think. They've created a specific property page, like a listing page, if you will, dedicated to hotels. And basically it's like a very good looking booking.com page where for one property you have several options, standard room, superior room, and the rest. And you can see that's kind of what you are, expecting for a good hotel page. But it's the same spirit, right? It's like just like you would expect for a hotel. You have everything in there. So what I want to show here, to just quickly wanted to talk about, is that they're serious about hotels and what they're doing. They also, this what they say, they're focusing on areas where they have lower supply or there are regulations, like New York City, for example, lots of regulations. They lost many listings. So obviously they can't just not offer nothing. So that's why hotels come in here. Airbnb says as a complement to this. But what's interesting as well to me, and Uvika, you can maybe chime on that. Um, Uvika, you said that you saw that, which is part of personalization, but once you click on a hotel once, you start hotels popping up in your search results, right? Even if you're looking for something else, they start trying to push a bit some hotels from time to time. That's what you've been seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. When you go to the Airbnb homepage, after you've looked at, not necessarily looked at hotels, that was not your intention, maybe to begin with, you were just looking for stays in an area, and then you might get prompted to look for hotels if it's one of the pilot cities, for example. In this case, Madrid was the example in my case. Um, and then when you see hotels, if you open one or two listings, when you go back to your Airbnb homepage, you will see carousels dedicated to hotels specifically. So that was interesting to me, that level of, it is a subtle nudge. It's not in your face because you have interacted. So uh,
Well,
assumption is you're interested.
again, if I put my Booking.com hat, what's very interesting that at some point Booking.com was only offering hotels, right? And when I joined the team, we were several of us joined the teams. The game was to say, how do we signal to people on Booking.com that Booking.com does have vacation rentals. So the idea was to say, okay, let's start injecting sorry, in search results, some vacation rental results, among the hotels. And then starting to, as you got more data, taking into account preferences. Okay, this person from time to time books hotels and vacation rentals. So when they search for a destination without a preference for a property type, let's just inject both. Or if they were searching for one person, more hotel. If the same person is searching for 4 persons, 5 person, maybe start renting a house. So that's here what Booking.com was doing to introduce more vacation rentals to hotels. And it did really well because now more than a third of the bookings, the booked nights on Booking.com are short-term vacation rentals and short-term rentals, right? And also bed and breakfast, but I won't get into details. Here we kind of see the reverse, right? It's in a way, which is the smart way to do this, right? You analyze the intention, what people do want to book, what's the use case, and maybe again, I don't know, we have to check that. But maybe if people will be searching for now on Airbnb a stay for one person for one night, maybe Airbnb will start showing more hotel supply than your short-term rentals in some cities, for example. I don't know, but on the other hand, that would be a use case for me, right? Maybe I'm trying just for a night, and maybe the idea of having to go and shop for dinner and cook at the apartment and make my own breakfast in the morning sometimes is a bit cumbersome, right? So hotels do exist, and we try to stay in short-term rentals, but sometimes they do exist. So again, it will be interesting to see, but do expect that, right? That they're us having this creeping up a bit. I'm not saying they will be booking.com in that sense that the hotels will take over. That does not make sense. But it's important. They can't just be empty-ended in some destinations. Last thing is the connected trip. So booking.com obviously has something that they call the connected trip, where the philosophy is that um, they want not just to sell you a hotel, they try to sell you more stuff like renting a car, booking a flight. So they try to connect these travel things end to end, which is tricky because not everybody thinking, I'm going to book a flight on booking.com and then book a hotel. But that's what they've been trying to do for years. Um, Here, and I'm going to why how Airbnb is different. Airbnb, I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Uvika, but Airbnb clearly says they're not a travel brand anymore, not a travel website anymore. They are, I think to me, they're a lifestyle brand. Why I'm saying this, because for example, we talk about this with Uvika, with introduced services, for example, or experiences, but I think you're sharing data experiences. Experiences is like, for example, in a city, I can book a tour, I can book a cooking lesson, a dancing class, a photography class. I have no clue, right? I think there's something like 40 to 50% of people booking an experience have not booked a stay. So it means locals are doing this. So I think that's where Airbnb also is going in the sense that they are a lifestyle brand and you can, book a stay there or do different activities. What's also interesting is that Booking.com is always going for mass, right? Scalable mass stuff. Like, so if you're gonna go to their experiences on Booking.com, it's stuff you completely expect, right? If you go to Paris, it's gonna be tickets for the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre Museum, completely things you expect. Airbnb is like, no, we're gonna create experiences and the rest and offer one of a kind sort of stuff. But if you look at this, it's always a higher pricing point. If you look at experiences or if you look at services, exactly, I will talk about this, it's kind of expensive. High quality, high expensive. To me, it's sort of getting turning into this aspirational high-endish brand. And we'll talk about this with luxury, but it's clearly they're not going for mass cheapest brand as a booking would. They have no loyalty program. Booking.com is a weapon, which is genius program. They don't have this. They don't want to do this apparently. And again, they really focus still officially the marketing still like we care about people, we care about guests, the story, it's about belonging. We all know it's a business platform. They're here for business. Sorry, but yeah. So before I go on to you and share for you, any other view for this, Yuvika? And again, if you don't agree, feel free, everybody in chat, to let me know.
Um, I totally agree, and I think what I find interesting is, especially, I think Airbnb has always prided itself on the way they are able to control the brand perception, whatever is going on behind the scenes does not always have to be what is presented to the Airbnb audience or potential guest. What you say can be different from what's happening in the background, right? Whereas Booking.com, perhaps not to that degree. Airbnb has a PR machine that's very strong, and it's utilizing that to, while in the backdrop, it comes closer than ever to Booking.com. The messaging, it's through messaging you can control, oh, actually, we are much more high end as compared to Booking.com, or we have a very different grade of stays, whatever that means in reality. Um, so I think Airbnb is going to be using its marketing strength to its advantage a lot more.
Yeah, and it is interesting, right? There's some stuff we're not covering here. That Airbnb, for example, launched Connections. Connections basically is. Are you talking about this later or not, Yuvika? I'm studying your story.
No, but I think we should. I think it's really integral to the story.
Yeah, something very unique to Airbnb, right? As again, I mean, you know me, I'm not just doom and gloom. Ooh, they're awful. It's really not my thing, right? It's to me, it's what's very interesting. Airbnb connection basically is that it's the concept that you go to an experience, right? Yuvika and I go. We don't know each other. We both book a cooking lesson in Rome. For me, probably forced by my partner because cooking is really not my passion, but I'm going there. And we hit it off. We talk, oh my God, you work in travel and short-term rental. Fantastic, Uvika. Let's just stay connected. So you can actually stay connected through Airbnb, right? Your profiles can be connected if you've done a experience together. So it's sort of the social network they're creating, but only based on real offline encounters you had, right? So it's to me what's also very interesting here. They're creating value here in the connections, and you think about this is way better than random people on X who spend their time insulting you. It's people you actually met, who exist, who are not bots. So there's value in this. And again, by doing this, and if you're a property manager, host, or if you're a guest, you know that Airbnb is asking you so many questions about your profile this day on day. In terms of AI and collecting data, it's fantastic because then imagine I'm launching, not saying this, but we talk about new services. Maybe in the future, if I'm Airbnb and I'm launching a service where I can match roommates, people who want to stay for a year in a city, rent an apartment. Oh, I can match roommates really well because I know a lot about their tastes. I can even find people connected, who knows, or people they know, friends of friends. Or if they're not going to do that, I don't think. But dating website, that could be interesting. You hit it off. I'm not saying this here, but I'm just saying, think about this. To me, there's something that Booking.com would not do, right? This whole like, hey, we launching a network of people and people can connect. The connection, importance of connection, and having this somewhat as well as a way for them to have this kind of super fans in a way, people who live on Airbnb, right? Or just spend hobbies on Airbnb and friends on Airbnb. It's interesting because that's very innovative. It's very different. Will it work or not? I don't know, but that to me it's very interesting to where they want to take it. So I'm talking a lot about new stuff. I'm just checking whether a few things. I'll take a few questions later. But I hinted already at existing services, new services. Yuvika, you want maybe to start covering this?
Absolutely. Thanks, Thibault. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a good connection with what we're talking about because we're talking about Airbnb's future. So what Airbnb is going to become in 2026 or what it's already on the path to becoming. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can. All right. Well, I am keeping Thibault's legacy strong and promise not to struggle for too long. Okay. So where are we? All right. There we go. I hope everyone can see my screen. So I'm talking about where Airbnb is going, but I think that starts with where Airbnb has been this year. Already in 2025, we've seen several new launches from Airbnb. When I talk about launches, I'm talking about sort of like lines of business. What's interesting is that Airbnb has already been signaling at a lot um, before this, right? We know that Airbnb, Francesca has talked about becoming the Amazon marketplace for travel, or becoming like Thibault pointed out earlier, becoming a lifestyle platform and not just a travel platform. But 2025 was the year that we actually saw what that means materially, like in practical terms, what that means. What we were promised actually, and what is the Airbnb promise here on out, are two new business launches every year. So this year we obviously saw experiences relaunched, and we saw the launch of Airbnb services. We also saw the relaunch of the hotel effort, right? So that's three in place of two, minimum two every year. Already Airbnb is ahead. And what I want to do before I dive into what these launches mean and what we can expect in 2026 is talk about where. So one thing, if there's one thing for you to take away from Airbnb's launches, is that Airbnb has come upon a formula. It has perfected a formula in 2025, and it continues to perfect that, which is launching pilots. What Airbnb means by launching pilots is that if there's a new line of business I want to launch, I first I first test it in key cities. For example, with hotels, Airbnb did not launch it everywhere. You will see hotel listings in most cities, yes. However, the actual effort, the actual campaign is happening in three main cities, of which Madrid is one, LA is one, and New York is one. New York, of course, because regulation really impacted short-term rental supply for Airbnb in New York. So it made sense from a regulation point of view. But it also helps in cities where perhaps short-term rental supply is not that much in urban markets. It's really about providing more and more options, making sure if someone comes to Airbnb, they find something that is useful to them, that they book something. There's a bigger possibility, right? But um, Airbnb piloted in three cities and saw and basically tested the reaction to and improved the product. And then the idea is to make sure then we can do a more global rollout. Same Similarly, if you go to the services pages, for example, every city does not have, there are cities where there's maybe like three services listed. Like you can get photos taken for, I don't know, 200 euros in your city. And maybe that's the only service available at this time. So it might seem like Airbnb is launching a whole new business line without actually having enough supply, but that's not really the case. The idea is Airbnb is really testing services and experiences in pilot cities before adding more and more supply. That level of testing will make sure Airbnb thinks that it'll allow it to maintain a level of quality that can justify investing more into that, right? For example, Airbnb has been pretty vocal about the reviews for experiences, which is super high. And so the reviews are going to be a big part of how Airbnb shows that, yes, this works, people want this, we know what they want, and we're delivering it to a quality that they want. And then it's time to introduce it to the rest of the world, right? Um, Now, obviously, this was for 2025. In 2026, what can we expect from Airbnb? Now, one thing to keep in mind is when Airbnb says two businesses a year, it does not necessarily mean two new businesses entirely, two entirely new lines of businesses. For instance, the two big major launches that we saw this year, hotels and experiences, are both relaunches. Airbnb has had experiences before, and there was a lot of consternation around why do they need to bring them back anyway. But the idea is to bring them back better in a way that they're better integrated within the user's experience so that it actually bundles value and really serves that connected trip vision that Thibault was talking about. Um, and also, it allows Airbnb to capture this demand where people maybe who want to do stuff in their own city versus traveling to a different city. That's a new sort of product for Airbnb to offer, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be something entirely new. It can be something that Airbnb has done before, but doing it better, doing it more intentionally. Um, One thing within this sort of scheme of things already, that's one pilot that Airbnb is already testing, for example, is kitchen stocking. Basically, Airbnb has a partnership with Instacart in which will allow hosts to stock kitchens for their guests. Now the guests can choose, right? The guests, when they have booked with you, they might get a notification if they want to add kitchen stock, if they want their kitchen to be stocked, if they want to add groceries. And if they choose that, the host will then get notification that the guest has chosen to stock the kitchen. The host will then have to receive the groceries and then add them to the kitchen to stock the kitchen. What does the host get in return for this more effort? Well, the host gets to make, you get $25 per stocking, I think, and you also get a one-time bonus. So this in itself, the service is not it does not seem like a huge launch because also it's only in one city right now. It's only being tested in one city. But it's really about what this indicates, right? Because this is a first good example of a service that Airbnb is offering to hosts that can allow them to add one more stream of revenue, right? This is not something directly for the guests because the guests can come to the Airbnb, they can put their Instagram or in sorry their Instacart order in and receive the groceries while they're there. But in this case, you are getting added to the layer and the host can make some money. And obviously, Airbnb gets data on people's grocery preferences, which is really valuable data too.
What?
And Thibault, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just finished your sentence, and I will indeed talk about this because it's interesting thing about services and verbal. I have this in mind. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So I just to finish my thought, what this connects to, obviously, is a possible launch of the host services marketplace. Now, this is a launch that Airbnb has been teasing for a few years, and we've been talking about what this could look like for a few years as well, which is supposed to be a marketplace where hosts can basically hire anybody you need to make hosting better, easier, faster, more profitable, right? You want to hire cleaners, you hire them through this marketplace, maintenance, you want to find a new tech stack also through there, you or even possible maintenance. So this can be if this shows us what that could look like. One thing that I do want to point out here, because somebody did say this earlier, I don't remember if it was in the comments or in the questions, which is about um, the impact on smaller hosts versus larger property managers. And I do want to comment on for example, the Instacart integration is not really something that at this time is scalable for larger PMs because you have to be there to receive the delivery and then start, and then you also have to, Airbnb has linked to these food handling terms that you need to follow from the USDA. So you actually have to be careful when handling these food items. It's not really something that's manageable,
yeah.
that makes sense from a larger PM point of view. Anyway, so that's the thought I wanted to finish. So what you were saying?
Yeah, a slightly different view on this, which is good because well, it's not fun. Um, to me, what if you go back to the if we go back to the example of the Instacart thing, what's interesting in a way is that you can see the platforms, Airbnb and Vrbo, for example, using your short-term rental, your vacation rental, to deliver services to the guests. And in the case of services, when Airbnb launched services, I raised it. I was like, well, I looked at terms and conditions. Basically, the idea was that your guest can book a chef, for example, who would come over, use your kitchen. Hopefully, the chef has some kind of insurance and basically perform some services at your property, and you're not getting any cut of that, right? And I'm like, there's a business. I'm like, well, they're using my asset or my owner's asset, and to do that, I was a bit like, so there's some pushback around this. This was interesting because it's a bit different as a host, property manager. I'm getting some cut out of this. Why not? Um, but as well, we can say is that there was Verbo also in the US, part of a company called Baby Equip that delivers, children stuff, equipment, cribs, and baby seats, all the things you don't want to take with you when you're traveling with the kids. Um, and and basically started launched it, and guests could book that. Again, there was some pushback from property managers saying, "Hey, we offer this. Why are you basically taking this service, this money making service away from me?" Right. So I think it's interesting where we see, but again, where the platforms are trying to go further, and indeed, it's good to say it's guest centric. It's helping guests, arrive with a fridge stocked, with a baby seat that's here that you don't have to carry in an airplane. I mean, anybody has tried to do this, it's always I always feel like, oh my God. Um, and yet at the same time, you always wonder, is like, okay, that's somebody's assets, and they try to deliver service, make a commission in somebody's asset. I don't know. It's interesting. And where I'm different as well is on the your host marketplace. To me, the host marketplace can be this, but also can be Like 2 years ago, Airbnb said that this year they would launch a marketplace where you can directly connect to um, different software, pieces of software, basically bypassing PMSs. We have not seen this, but again, it's that one service Instacart to me is like okay, they are putting processes, maybe payments in place to enable people to host to tap into a third-party service to get a commission out of that, or disconnect that third-party service to Airbnb. So that's interesting. And maybe in 2026 we finally at this marketplace that of software solution as well, or a solution like Monoturno, which is a solution in the US or in Europe, where you can find cleaners, right? Would connect directly to Airbnb like a super app would, right? So I mean, that's interesting on this. Yeah. I think we have a fourth one we have to cover super fast.
All right, I will try. But okay, just to add to your point, Thibault, I do agree with you about maybe potentially laying down a framework of payments to facilitate this. We know that's also something we've seen throughout, more and more control over the actual payment processing, as well as in terms of partnership, how that might go as well. All right. In terms of 2026 launches, one other possible logical launch is the relaunch of Airbnb Lux, because what have we discovered so far? That doesn't have to be a totally new business Airbnb is launching in a year. So Lux hasn't disappeared. It's not something that Airbnb will be bringing back from the dead as such, right? The filter exists on Airbnb today, as you can see. But what's interesting is that, like Thibault said before, Airbnb's intends to be perceived as high price point, but also the price points of experiences as well as services. Lux really ties in well with that strategy. And also, it helps that this year, one thing we saw consistently in travel trends is that there was one segment that grew across the board in all markets, no matter what kind of instability, volatility was happening in any of the other markets. One segment was luxury and ultra luxury. So it would kind of make sense for Airbnb to formally pilot that in its own pilot cities. And yeah, Thibault,
And Brian
anything?
he said that, right, to your point, as you said, right? He did mention this during the earnings call, right? That Lux is something they were looking at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. So there's even more evidence that Lux will possibly be here in
And,
2026.
during COVID, Airbnb killed so many projects, but to your point, Lux, a lot of stuff disappeared, right? They had acquired a very long story, but anyway, a Canadian company that was doing luxury stuff. They more or less killed everything. They killed the concierge that with it. They kept the offering. Let's see what they're gonna do. Right? Because at the time, remember, basically they kind of had some kind of concierge and some, they had like you had to be vetted. You had to visit your place. I know this pretty well. Um, but let's see how it goes. Just clarification, I don't mean that the platform needs to be expensive. I just mean they're not afraid of being expensive as an aspiration brand. Right. Right.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. Um, all right. So before I go into the next segment, what I would like to do is maybe first show an example of what I'm about to talk about. And what better way to do it than to show you my Airbnb homepage and just take a quick peek at what I see there. So hopefully you can see my screen now. This is my Airbnb homepage. I'm already logged in, so this is what I would see if I arrive here. Obviously, I see recently viewed recently viewed market, stay near Gran Via, because I was looking at hotels in Madrid to look at how hotels show up in on Airbnb. What I want to do is just quickly click on one of the hotel listings and show you something interesting we might see. So now, one of the first things that we see on a hotel page that you will not see on, for example, a short-term rental page today, at least, is this particular description. This is AI generated, right? Normally, your listing would have the description that you provide, which appears further down there, like this. But in this case, we see another brief description which hits on the main points, main most important things about that listing, in the sense that what are the guests talking about in the reviews, what amenities are people looking at when booking this property. So you see that there. And then there's this particular segment, which is dynamic. This will depend on what I've looked at in the past. This is not the same. If you look up this listing right now on your own Airbnb accounts, you will see perhaps something different. For example, I also saw something here when I was looking at hotels. One thing it said was that a guest from India rated this highly because I'm from India, and I saw it actually say those words in this particular description. Now, which now is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about, which is AI personalization, AI on Airbnb, or how Airbnb is using AI in its business. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Airbnb has been had previously been very shy about talking about AI, or very dismissive. Brian Chesky had been not as enthused about the possibility of using AI in travel. Even though all the other competitors, all the other major players were talking about how they are introducing new AI features every month, every few months. However, this year, something big has shifted. So maybe many of you might already know this. So Airbnb has three strategic pillars. Number one is making the service better for hosts and guests. Second is bringing Airbnb to more parts of the world, so expansion, geographic, that is. And the third was expand what Airbnb offers, which is the number of services, the number of offers, the number of businesses Airbnb offers. This year, sneakily, a fourth pillar has entered the chat, which is integrate AI across Airbnb to make it smarter, more personal, easier to use. Now, this is interesting because Airbnb had previously, Brian Chesky had shown not so much interest, and now we see that it's part of the actual strategic pillars for Airbnb. What changed? Well, obviously, we know that there is pressure on all platforms to actually talk about AI in their strategy. Yes, um, it's something that investors expect from you at this time. If you are thinking about growing your business, or even just operating, you need to know how you're going to be utilizing AI. That is expected of you. Now, bear in mind, Airbnb has been utilizing AI for quite some time. AI usage is not new for Airbnb. Airbnb is using it for personalization for several years already. However, this is the year that Airbnb has had to share what that means in concrete terms, what's out now and what's out in the future. So maybe I stop sharing and I can just share my views about what that means. So we already saw currently how Airbnb is utilizing AI, which is the number one way is personalization. And everything we've talked about so far kind of feeds into that, right? We were talking about Instacart. When Airbnb gets this data through Instacart of what groceries people are stocking, their food preferences, this is data point that Airbnb can use to personalize to their guests the results that they get, right? Similarly, Airbnb Connections, this social platform sort of feature that Airbnb is introducing, they allow Airbnb to gather data that that no other platform of its kind can have. And then it can use that data again to make sure that it can surface what matters to every single person coming to its website and show them what they really care about, whether they are families with children, whether they are solo travelers, digital nomad, wants to go to an island nation and work from there remotely. Doesn't matter who you are, Airbnb wants to know as much about you as possible and use that to show you stays, experiences, services, everything that you could possibly want. Um, Now, what does that mean in terms of, so also Airbnb is also using AI, for example, for customer support. And there is a huge percentage of improvement in customer support and incidents, or how quickly they're resolved, that Airbnb is already been able to solve using AI. But the next step is natural language AI search. Now, what do I mean when I say natural language search? Basically, just means that I should be able to go and type in, "Hi, I'm traveling with two kids under 8 and we want to go somewhere for Christmas in December for a week. Instead of choosing from like three filters that are provided to me, like choose destination, choose your dates, and choose the number of guests, which is how people have used travel search for 20 years, right? Now there's a huge shift in how people are doing travel search, how they are being inspired to travel. And that's what you can expect from Airbnb in the future as well. And aside from this, I think the real value of Airbnb's AI usage is going to be in personalization because as Airbnb adds hotels, that which is more create is it will create more competition, let's be honest. Adds more supply everywhere, then it becomes really crucial that what I see as someone who's searching for a stay is more suitable to my needs. Already Airbnb is able to anticipate what that is, so there's a likelier so I'm more likely to book,
Yeah.
basically. Thibault, you want to add something to that? What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's perfect. Indeed, your point is because natural search is indeed how people are searching now in ChatGPT, right? And it's all these platforms and even some property managers, right, fear of being disintermediated, right? Because if now you can just go to Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, and say, fine, as you said, probably that matches my need, and somehow they can retrieve a property for that, and hopefully to your direct booking website. What's the point? I think that's the fear. It's gonna be tricky, right? But it's so much you need to able, if you're Airbnb, you need to be able to answer why people would do that search on Airbnb and not on ChatGPT. Um, you okay with we cover that? You at least you finish, and I would like to cover quickly three questions we have, and then close.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share on this. We have to remember that for Airbnb, owning that data is very important because Airbnb really prides itself on most of its traffic being direct, so it doesn't want to lose traffic to ChatGPT, Perplexity. There's also sort of like a survival factor here, not really, not for Airbnb's size, but you have to show others, you have to show stakeholders that you've thought it through.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks again. I think the AI stuff is super interesting because it's happening. It's not like, well, it will happen. It's happening. A really quick question was clarification about what we said, right? First question in the Q&A is, I thought strict policy was still around as long as you opt in. Exactly. If you did opt in time, you are grandfathered, so you still have it, just in case of my property. Yes. But you needed to have opted in. It's not offered to new properties. That's from Anonymous. Angeliki is asking hotels we can add from now or next year. Um, they are available. You have to ask your PMS whether the PMS connection allows you to do this. So it depends on some markets, but I think it's kind of available. Um, Angelique, I'm going through your question. It's more a remark, right? That indeed that companies winning properties, high expenses cannot accept last minute consolations, especially in high season. This forecast plan only low season could we accept more flexible control policies. Well, it kind of looks like, Angelique, in this case, you would welcome the dynamic policy. We can have like a certain strict policy for the summer and more flexible in things. And again, this kind of like multiple cultural policies, rates, and conditions, something I mean, Booking.com has been offered with their rate plans for years, right? So it's not like new, maybe it's a simple way again to bring this about. I think that's it. So thank you all. There's still more 50 people connected. Thanks. Oh, Paul. Okay, last question I will take. Thoughts on how your listings are preference on the algorithm on different consumer policies? I don't. So, what we know that for ranking, what's important to Airbnb in a way is two factors. The probability that you'll get booked. So, is your listing great looking, and does it match the criteria of what the person's searching or their history? And another factor of this is, and will this guest leave you a 5-star review? Because Airbnb really cares about quality and reviews. So meaning that they really make sure that it's going to match the usual experience this person is looking for, or the kind of things they want. So can search policy in a way, it depends because um, the probability that somebody going to book is probably affected by the fact that something is more or less easier to cancel. But on the other hand, if it's kind of the last properties around, or there's not much supply, or it's the only property with, I don't know, a pool and looking for a pool, so it's definitely a factor that will kick in, right? Again, if you think that ranking is influenced by two things, one, probability that somebody will book, multiplied by that probability that they will leave a 5-star review, you can see how cancellation may be something hindering a higher ranking. But again, things are a bit, it's always murky, right? We're so with Uvika ranking now is personalized. So there's so many factors that will influence this. I mean, I really don't believe in like being number one page on Airbnb because I'm like, yeah, but for whom? Searching what? At what time? I hope it helps. Again,
Just to add, Airbnb shared that there's over 800 different metrics that are deciding where you appear on the algorithm, and this is outside of personalization, by the way. So
yeah, but it's a good concern, right? But again, and also another factor in my market, most people were strict or stuff like this. So if I'm in a market where that's the norm, again, it counts less. I hope it's not too washy-washy, wishy-washy as an answer. I hope it clarified this. All right, I will close it with slightly over time. Thank you all for people who stayed over, more than 50 of you. Thank you, Yuvika, for preparing this also and speaking with me today. It was a pleasure.
it was my pleasure. Thank you, Thibault. Thanks everyone for attending and for letting me gather my thoughts live. I appreciate your patience. Thanks.
Quick shout out to Sneak Down who helped prepare this event. So as usual, this is being recorded. If you watch the recording till the end, you get bananas from me. I want you brownie points, but not brownies. So you get banana points. There you go. Thank you all. You take care of yourselves. If you're in the US, happy Thanksgiving next week. And everybody, we see you next month. Take care.
Thanks.